I think the determination to become fully enlightened, to be a perfect Buddha, may be somewhat still short of the vow, because they take the vow very seriously. And the reason is that you don't ever want to take the vow when there could be almost any danger of ever renouncing the vow. That is considered a really sad thing. Just like taking the vow is like being born again, born again on the way to enlightenment, on the way to evolutionary fulfillment. Remember, this is an evolutionary thing. The reason is they think enlightenment is just some sort of thing goes pop in your head and you have an insight. And that's, of course, fallacious. You can have a great insight, but the enlightenment is an evolutionary thing. And it's not only an evolutionary thing for the person, and we should really talk about this more, because any person is, a field of other persons. So any person is interconnected with all the other persons around them. Their family, their clan, their village, their tribe, their nation, their species, because all the animals are all around them too, the bees, the birds, even the plants, maybe, although for convenience sake the Buddha didn't include the plants like the Jains did, because he didn't want to make life seem impossible. And but in a way there's really no reason not to include the plants. And remember, all theories about relative reality, scientific as they may be, are still relative theories. There's no absolute laws or dogmas or things like that in the relative, because rules and patterns and hypotheses and theories are all relational, except the theory that there is no ultimate theory. That is the one that aims beyond, like a negation does. A negation, is there an elephant in this room? We look everywhere. There still could be a mini elephant somewhere. There could be a universe with an elephant universe somewhere that we can't see because it's microscopic from our dimension, etc. But still, looking normally for a normal elephant, we decide there's no elephant. But we didn't come to closure. Negation never has closure. It's an opener. What else is there, And what exception to what we've discovered is there? So that's so we discover the infinite potential of everything, actually. It's what we discover, which was there to start with, right? So a negation sort of points you toward openness and transcendence and melting and dissolving. And it doesn't cause you to arrive at nothing, because there's no place like that. There is no nothing, right? Although you may, because we're used to projecting from our concepts into reality, we may have an experience as if there was nothing. And we have to remember not to be trapped in that experience, which we do that's a relational thing, being trapped somewhere, even thinking there's a nothing around us or we are nothing. Those are all relational experiences. There's no absolute nothing, in other words. There's only a concept can be absolute, just like there's no absolute point. But the concept of an absolute point, x, y, z in 3 dimensions, x, y, z, a in 4 dimensions, etc., up to endlessly, those are concepts. But the reality, there's no dot there, okay? To be exactly x, y, z, there's no dot. So that's an ordinary thing to understand, actually. You can understand that relationally, which is an opener, okay? But it's still, even though I think the determination for enlightenment, which is where we still are in Book 18, they're praising the enlightening being, because they're saying if you're determined to be enlightened, you're almost there, really, except for the illusion of time and gradual evolution. But on the other hand, relatively speaking, you're not almost there. You have a huge evolution ahead of you. Because if you imagine what enlightenment is, it's you and the whole world that you're in, because you bring the whole world with you. Because you are not satisfied of leaving anybody behind. As W said, no child left behind. No grown-up, no child, no supposedly dead and departed person. Nobody left behind. And not only no human, but no animal, no bug, no microbiome bacteria, no microbe. Everyone goes with you. And so in the higher stages of being an enlightening being, you are completely hooked up with everybody else, and you're bringing them along. So, and your abilities to bring them along, your sense of connection to them, like such as your clairvoyance to be present empathetically in their mind to know what they're thinking. Your divine eye, you're seeing at a distance, knowing what they're doing. I loved it. I was reading in the wonderful work of Robert Subodha about his great teacher Vimala Ananda, not Vimalakirti, but maybe like Vimalakirti, but Vimala Ananda, a resident of Mumbai. And he and all great sadhus, they always have a fire going in front of them, and they keep a fire going all the time, and they sit there poking the fire with their poker, which they call a chimta, which is like their scepter and ultimate reality. And then they see everything happening in the fire. The fire shows them what their students and disciples and the politicians and the people in the other countries, and they see the world through the fire. It's amazing. He was talking about how he knew such and such a jockey was corrupt and was going to not allow his horse to win, who was able to win. Because he also was a racehorse guy, like Vimalakirti. He did ordinary things. Amazing story. And that's called a Dooney. And then I realized that my grandmother's nickname was Dooney. Elizabeth Dean was her name. But her nickname was Dooney, which was planting a seed in my subconscious as a child. Okay, so at the end of this thing on the determination for enlightenment in books 17 and 18, they praise the enlightening being and they say, thus practicing, they attain Buddha knowledge, entering deeply into the treasury of the truth of the enlightened. Sure, well, you can do that more quickly, but that doesn't make you a Buddha. You have to evolve into a Buddha because you have to bring the whole world with you. And therefore, if you really take the vow, you have to imagine not only yourself transformed, but the world transformed. The world transformed into a Buddhaverse from a universe. The universe is where each person is trapped in their own self-enclosed one world that returns around them, because the whole world is happening around them, because they are the main activity. But once you become an enlightening being, and once you're a Buddha, you're not even there really. In a way, you are everywhere, which means you're not so that invested in any one kind of manifestation of yourself, and you can be many beings that are there, because you're actually everywhere. You're all the non-Buddha beings that there. You feel you're all of them too. And so what you create, a Buddhaverse, means that it turns around Buddha, but that doesn't mean around you. That means around everybody's Buddha nature. So that means that the world is there to unfold and open up everybody's bliss of being one with everybody else, and therefore everybody having love energy as what they live is the force of life that makes their life vast and infinite and joyous and delightful and beautiful and so on. And that makes it a Buddhaverse. And so you are the Buddhaverse, for a Buddha, and that it takes time because other people need time, not only you but other people. So, when you first think of a Buddha, you think, oh, I'll be a Buddha. Yeah, but when you're a Buddha, everybody else is in a place where they're turning into Buddhas automatically because of their openness and because that's their Buddha nature, and that's in a way, that's you, and then you find everybody else too. You don't mind the reinforcement. Every Buddha is there in every being, because every being has that infinity in themselves. So there's no room for infinite numbers of Buddhas. And yet this also doesn't destroy even their ignorance and their suffering. They only can do, because they're creating it themselves, with their creativity, they're creating a self-enclosure, and they're trying to wall off other beings, and they can't, so they suffer. And so, but they also have a deeper place where they know that's futile effort, and that's their futility body. And a Buddha verse is where everything speaks to them and opens them and soothes them and heals them. And even nothingness joins emptiness to be helpful to them. Okay? So the world loves them and helps them. Thus practicing, they attain Buddha knowledge, entering deeply into the treasury of truth of the enlightened. As great teachers, they expound the subtle truth like sweet elixir, refreshing all. Isn't that's like this book is like that. By the way, I want everyone to know that someone whose name is Lee Lightfoot, Lightfoot Lee, I have no idea if it's male or a female or who it is, who he or she or it is, I have no idea. And they wrote me and they said they loved our Saturday night of the reading this thing, and it was just flipping them out and took them back to a time when they went. And I have no idea of the circumstances. I have to find more. I'll report to you when I do. And they read it out loud 3 times. It took them 3 years, or him, or it, or her, or she, whatever Lightfoot Lee is, 3 years to do it. And they were in another world for 3 years. And then they were doing whatever they were doing to live, you know. I guess. I have to find out more. And then but when they come on Saturday night, they go back into that feeling and they're so happy. Isn't that? And then I asked, I wrote right away back, did you record it? No. They didn't. You know, too bad. If anybody else gets the bug to do that, and you have the time and the means and the food to survive on while you do it, and you're not driving a neighbor or a roommate or a partner or a child or a parent crazy, by all means, please record it. Okay? What an inspiration. 3 times they read it out loud. Tom Cleary, I think you didn't even know that. Or that maybe they'll tell me they were in touch with him or something. Because he was so grumpy. You know, I've had also people write me since I've been doing this. That at one point they tried to call Tom Cleary and he was all irate on the phone. Don't call me, you know. I'm busy translating another thing, you know. And he was given up kind of. You know, because he himself lived in this and he expanded to see many other people who had been touched by this in Asia and Japan and China. Their compassion and pity extends to all. They know the mind of every sentient being, so they don't need to be telephoned. Expound to them in accord with their predilections, infinite, boundless, enlightening teachings. Their deportment is calm, and so that's not me, you know, I'm not calm. As a majestic elephant, their fearless courage is like that of a lion. I'm a little like that. Imperturbable as a mountain, their knowledge is like an ocean, and like a great rain, they remove all heat. When Truth Wisdom had spoken these verses, the Buddha was delighted, and everyone reverentially put them into practice. Buddha, no departure. Well, okay, then they ascend. The Buddha takes the assembly with him. Remember, he doesn't leave. He never leaves being under the Bodhi tree. Because under the Bodhi tree, climbing up that tree goes up the entire universe, all the way to the realm of no form, which is not a realm. You know, the realm with disembodied, bodiless realm. Only subtle energy mind, but nothing. And the pure realm of pure form is a pretty energy bodies. They're pretty much big energy whales. They're like whales floating in light. The Brahma gods, you know, they don't have ordinary boundary bodies the same way. They don't. They are sort of boundary, but they are not. They're porous, you know. They don't bump into each other. They don't need to bump into each other. They're non-binary, remember? Then by the spiritual power, it's called Ascent to the palace of the Suyama heaven. And Suyama, I think it's Suyama. It's a long ah in Sanskrit, the Suyama heaven. Because Yama is the lord of death, you know. Yama means many things. It means restraint, a limitation. But also ya and ma. Ya means up and ma means down. Ya ma. So yama, went up and down and around and around. The death is therefore this transition point where you go to another body. There's no state of death, really, because it's not a state. Being infinite, you're temporarily infinite, because you find your Buddha reality. But you think of it, when you meet it, it seems to you a place where you're lost, because you feel isolated, because you're so used to, you bring your sense of isolation into it. And then you fear, because you don't know what else you feel you should be knowing a limit. You can't just be wide open infinitely. So you can't stay there and yet expand to be present everywhere, which is what a Buddha is. So a Buddha is for a Buddha maybe this, but it's infinite, so it's not a state. It's a presence in everything, in all states, is what it is, Buddhahood. Then by the spiritual, and therefore the ability to manifest embodiments that enjoy and experience every kind of state. And you can be a being in hell that helps another hell being, infinite numbers of other hell beings, discover their own infinity of freedom, even in hell, which enables them to get out of hell. Is the one way they can get out of there. But because people have infinite creativity, and they can therefore create, because they channel infinite energy, everybody, even the most trapped and evil person, most enclosed and self-imprisoned person. But they have infinite creativity to do that. So then they kind of infinitely restrict their experience of infinity, which would be their freedom. And they're fixed, they feel prisoned there. You see, that's how they get prisoned. So you can go there with your infinity, and you can engage with their infinite negative and positive entrapment, and you can become that little tiny bit of reinforcement of their freedom infinity that gives them the doorway to getting out of there. And you can be fully experiencing hell without losing your bliss, because your infinity of infinities is more powerful than the one infinity of self-enclosure and entrapment. Okay? There's a math to that. You get, that's the numbers. Then so Suyama heaven. And it means the heaven of non-contention. There's no longer a struggle, because it's the first one above the heaven of 33, where Buddha carried the assembly with him. He's everywhere, but he brings the assembly up there with him to Indra's heaven, remember? Now he's going up to Suyama's heaven. And there's no contention, meaning the asuras can't go there to struggle with you, invade your divine city, like Olympus, where they do. Okay? So then by the spiritual power of the enlightened one, in all worlds of the 10 directions, in the Jambu continent of each of the 4 quarters, and on the peak of their polar mountains, the enlightened one was seen in the midst of an assembly, wherein the enlightening beings, due to the spiritual power of the enlightened one, expounded the teaching, each one having the sense of facing the Buddha at all times. So each of the enlightening beings thinks Buddha's right there with them, individually, even though they're already bodhisattvas. They're not like looking from hundreds of thousands of other bodhisattvas over their heads, sort of in an auditorium, and there's some far remote performer or Buddha there. They think the Buddha's right in front of them. It's so interesting, when you say enlightened one, you are ready to think of something different. You don't know what enlightened. Your imagination opens. Oh, what could enlightened be? Oh, they say it's a being who's infinite. Oh, they say it's a complete. Oh, a being made of light. Oh, therefore a being who has no mass, or their mass is infinite mass. So they're everywhere, suffused and infused and everything in everything, like infusion everywhere, and suffusion everywhere, and perfusion everywhere, and their mind opens like that. But then you say Buddha, and people immediately think of Buddhism. Oh, Buddha, yeah, that's a religion, and that's some guy in India. So in a way, it's not helpful initially. Even the magical word Buddha, which in Tibet, they translated it in Tibet. They translated it as Sangye, And they did because they realized that the Bud part is to awaken, and the Da part is to know everything, and to beyond awakening, it's to embrace sleep as well. Not to just be in some opposite state. Awaken means opposite from asleep. But a Buddha, an enlightened being, is simultaneously asleep and awake. Not just awake. Not just woke. Woke and slope. Sleep, or whatever you want to call it. Asleep. And dreaming. And something even beyond all of those. Some fourth state. And in ecstasy. All simultaneously. So I'm worried and unhappy when people come up with some rule and they decide, oh, we're only going to call Buddha an awakened one. We're not going to say enlightened anymore, because Descartes and Newton, they were part of the Enlightenment, and Steven Pinker is advertising the Enlightenment as scientific materialist, Harvard, MIT, high salaries, elitism. So we don't like enlightenment anymore. No, wrong. Enlightenment means you're light. Light means, and its natural state is at its own natural speed. It has no mass. It's not a photon particle. That's a scientific fiction to make it manageable. Light is everywhere. It's infinite, okay? So enlightenment means you become an infinite being. An infinite being is manifested in every finite being because it's infinite. So no finite being can keep it out. So enlightened one is better. And it connects science to spirituality. It's not like we're going to go and be awakened like the Great Awakening in the 1830s in Oneida and Western New York State, where everybody met Jesus. And they were good Christians. And they were awakened to the gospel. Yeah, then that's a dualistic state. Then there's unawakened around there who are pagan, heathen, horrible, bad people who are going to burn them at the stake. Buddha is not dualistic. Buddha is right here. He's right here with us in this book, in my voice, in me, in you, in the camera, in the whatever it is, in time and space, everywhere. There's not one being, it's not many beings, it's not a God, it's not a human, it's all of us. That's enlightened one. Okay? So please don't tell us it's just awakened. Yes, the Tibetans were good. They said Sang, which means awakened, purified, cleansed of ignorance, of sleep of ignorance. But then it's Ge, which means expanded, become magnificent, everywhere, embracing all. Not just awakened, which means embracing sleep as well. Not the opposite of the sleep, okay? Not abandoning the sleeping ones. At that time, Lokajeshta, Shuzun, the world-honored one, taking from Chinese, which really is Bhagavan, which means the lucky one, the lucky dog, the lucky one, Bhagavan. It doesn't mean someone beyond you. We were so wrong for decades, all of us, saying the Lord. No, it's not your landlord. It's the lucky guy, fortunate, the one who shows you by their embodiment the fortune that can be yours. And that really is yours. Because he doesn't belong to himself. Buddha does not, he, she, it, does not belong to itself. So any Buddha body is only manifest for the sake of those who behold it and think of it as something separate from them, but in a way that they're seeing someone who they subliminally sense doesn't itself feel separate from them. So they feel kind of connected. It's like the mother's breast is there for them. It's like a baby seeing that mother's breast. It doesn't think it's another thing. It thinks it's rightly deserved milk source. Right? It wants it. But in China, then, they respect the elders. So they call world honor one because it's too hierarchical a society. So they pick Lokajeshta. But in the Sanskrit, Lokajeshta means the world elder. Because all sane cultures, they respect older people, unlike U.S., where we don't care about them. At that time, the world-honored one, the fortunate one, without leaving the foot of the enlightenment trees and the peaks of the polar mountains in the plural, because remember, Buddha simultaneously in many worlds, Shakyamuni is, in many Saha worlds. Headed for the jewel-adorned hall, then they dropped the plurals, but you could keep it, the jewel-adorned halls of the palaces of the Suyama heavens. Because all different universes, Buddha-verses, have Suyama heavens. They have these different structures, The king of the Suyama heaven, seeing from afar the Buddha coming, produced by magical powers a jewel lotus bank lion throne in his palace, with 1,000,000 tiers of decorations, wrapped in 1,000,000 golden nets, covered with 1,000,000 drapes of flowers, 1,000,000 drapes of garlands, 1,000,000 drapes of perfumes, and 1,000,000 drapes of jewels, surrounded by 1,000,000 canopies, each of flowers, garlands, perfumes, and jewels. 1,000,000 lights illumined it. 1,000,000 celestial kings of the Suyama heaven bowed in respect. 1,000,000 Brahma kings danced for joy. 1,000,000 enlightening beings sang praises. Brahma kings means the most powerful, non-binary, pure energy form realm deity of each universe, of each Buddha-verse. There's endless ones, but now they're all collecting in this one, and in the Suyama heavens, and in a way in the Suyama heavens of each one of the multiple ones, actually. Don't enclose yourself in any one set of visions about it. But notice, this is the supreme, beyond capitalism going beyond itself. Because this is the realm of non-competition. And therefore, there's nobody trying to take away the millions. So everyone has the millions. There's no limit. Because there's no limit in the clear light of the void. There's infinite abundance. There's infinite lithium. There's infinite gold. There's infinite diamonds. There's infinite everything. In the clear light, it can produce anything that anybody wants to the limitless quantity of it. So there's no need for scarcity for some to have abundance. In this Suyama, that's what Suyama heaven means. And that's why, and it's still a desire realm heaven, and it's still a gendered heaven. So there's limitless eros, okay? Limitless eros. So much so that it becomes an obstacle to the gods who get closed into thinking, this is just me here and it's only this one place and I'm here and I'm having a limitless time. Then they stop evolving. They get stuck in this abundance, in a way. They get trapped in abundance. Poor things. 1,000,000 heavenly symphonies, each played 1,000,000 tones of truth, clouds of various garlands, containing endlessly 1,000,000 clouds of various flowers, 1,000,000 clouds of various garlands, 1,000,000 clouds of various beauties, and 1,000,000 clouds of various robes, covered all around, 1,000,000 clouds of various wish-fulfilling roots of goodness. Jewels shining with light. The throne was born from 1,000,000 kinds of roots of goodness, protected by 1,000,000 Buddhas, enlightened ones, augmented by 1,000,000 kinds of virtues, dignified and purified by 1,000,000 kinds of faith and 1,000,000 kinds of vows, produced by 1,000,000 kinds of action, established by 1,000,000 kinds of truth, conjured up by 1,000,000 kinds of spiritual powers, always producing 1,000,000 kinds of sounds, revealing all truths. What a throne! Then that celestial king, having set out this throne, turned to the enlightened one, the world-honored one, the lucky one, the Buddha, bowed and joined his palms with reverence and respect, and said, "Welcome, O world-honored one, welcome, felicitous one," that's a sugata, sukhamgata, one who has gone to bliss. That is the orgasmic being, that means. Felicitous one, welcome enlightened one, welcomed, O worthy, welcomed, O truly awakened one, please be so gracious as to sojourn in this palace. Then the Buddha, accepting the invitation, ascended to the precious hall. This also took place in the same way everywhere, in the 10 directions. Because remember, this is repeated infinitely. Everything that you do is the infinite. It's Nietzsche. Nietzsche must have read this in a previous life to come up with the idea of the eternal recurrence. Okay? Nietzsche, or at least he was a Suyama heaven deity, to come up with the idea that don't do anything. His movement beyond Kant and beyond Hegel was to make it visceral, the experience of goodness, and to say, don't do anything that you wouldn't be willing to repeat infinitely, eternally, endlessly. So do not even make a gesture like this. That you don't make a gesture you wouldn't be willing to repeat infinitely. So therefore make it really enjoyable. Make it really beautiful. Feel bliss radiating out along the muscles and tendons of your arm into your fingertips. Feel the air on the fingertips. Gently, the temperature, feel the shoulder, feel the mind, feel people seeing you do it, that they don't feel bossed or pushed or anything by the way you move your hand. Feel it, and you therefore you'd be willing to continue infinitely doing exactly what you're doing. The eternal recurrence, famous. So Zarathustra, he put it in the mind and put it in the person of Zarathustra, thank goodness. Not in the mind of, originally Nietzsche loved Buddha, actually. He studied Sanskrit. He heard about Buddha, but unfortunately he had a wrong idea about Buddha, because at that time in Germany, people really didn't know about Mahayana Buddha. Buddha revealing his non-dual level. They knew only maybe Sri Lankan Theravada Buddha, who left the Lone Ranger, he left town after giving his teaching. He went off to the nirvana, which was elsewhere. So Nietzsche was sensitive to those who put life down, who didn't see the vitality and the bliss energy of life. Nietzsche was in love with Andreas Salome, the great muse of Rilke and Nietzsche and Stefan Zweig and all the great literatis around the turn of the century. And he knew there was bliss in life somehow, although he never really got on with her in some way because he was so freaked out, his mind. But I don't know, maybe he had a hug. But point is, previous life, eternal recurrence. This is the vision of eternal recurrence, a source of vision of eternal recurrence, really. It's wonderful. I do love Nietzsche. But luckily, then since he thought Nietzsche was dualistic, since he thought Buddha was dualistic, Nietzsche, and he didn't want that dualism. He wanted life to be the place of enlightenment and the infinite life. He had that intuition. And so he decided he would make Zarathustra, Zoroaster, the Iranian, the Zoroastrian guy, who was a little bit earlier than Buddha, like Mahavira. He was in the preparatory planetary wave of enlightened beings in Iran. And so he had thus spake, so sprach Zarathustra. But why that's lucky is that, then Nietzsche's silly sister married a silly Nazi, anti-Semitic guy called Forster, who then, because Nietzsche became famous before he died, and after died, they used Nietzsche and forged things and pretended like his Übermensch thing was like the Nazi Superman. And so he had a bad name for decades, until the great, wonderful scholar Walter Kaufmann in Germany and at Princeton redeemed Nietzsche and showed how Nietzsche was the opposite of anti-Semitic. If anything, he was a little bit critical of self-righteous Christians, actually, rather than anti-Judaic at all. He was not at all anti-Semitic. But there was a long period when then Buddhism would have had a bad name because of that wrong association created by the silly sister and the treacherous, lying Mr. Furster. Okay, well, that's just a side story, sorry. Digression, I know. But the point is, we are in this world. So we're not escaping into this. We're seeing this here, present, now. That's what the point of reading this is. Sutra makes Buddha alive to us now, here. And so it shows how all of these things are here, really. We're not excluded. So it's not really a digression. That's an excuse for almost any kind of digression. Okay, so then Buddha sat down there. Then the Buddha, accepting the invitation, ascended to the precious hall. This also took place in the same way everywhere in the 10 directions. Then the celestial king, reflecting on the roots of goodness he had planted with past Buddhas, spoke these verses with the aid of the Buddha's spiritual powers. The Buddha renowned, Yashas, famed throughout the 10 directions, supreme among the auspicious, has been in this hall of jewels. Therefore this place is most auspicious. The Buddha Jewel King, lamp of the world, supreme among the auspicious, has been in this pure hall. Therefore this place is most auspicious. The Buddha Joyful Eye, with unhindered vision, supreme among the auspicious, has been in this adorned hall. Therefore this place is most auspicious. The Buddha Burning Lamp, lighting the world, supreme among the auspicious, has been in this magnificent hall. Therefore this place is most auspicious. The Buddha Benefactor, aid of the world, supreme among the auspicious, has been in this undefiled hall. Therefore this place is most auspicious. The Buddha Well Aware, who had no teacher, supreme among the auspicious, has been in this hall of precious fragrance. Therefore this place is most auspicious. The Buddha Surpassing the gods, Atideva, a lamp in the world, supreme among the auspicious, has been in this hall of sublime fragrance. Therefore this place is most auspicious. The Buddha No Departure, hero of philosophy, supreme among the auspicious, has been in this hall of the universal eye. Therefore this place is most auspicious. The Buddha Unsurpassed, replete with all virtues, supreme among the auspicious, has been in this well-adorned hall. Therefore this place is most auspicious. The Buddha Ascetic, benefiting the world, supreme among the auspicious, has been in this hall of universal embellishment. Therefore this place is most auspicious. Just as the king of the Suyama heaven in this world, graced with the occult power of the Buddha, recalled the virtues of Buddhas of ancient times and extolled them, 10 of them, so did all the kings of the Suyama heavens in the 10 directions laud the virtues of Buddhas. Then the world-honored one entered the jewel-adorned hall and sat cross-legged on the jewel lotus flower bank, lion throne. The hall suddenly expanded vastly. The same thing happened in all worlds of the 10 directions as happened in the abodes of the gods. So for the minute the Buddha entered it and sat on the jewel lotus, remember with a million this and a million, the incredible field of infinitely radiating and resonating radiance, it suddenly expanded to embrace the universe. And it did so from infinite points of expansion. Okay, because this was repeated infinitely, without destroying other forms and other Buddhas and their Buddhahood. So in this Buddhahood, all Buddhas are enjoying Buddhahood. Then in book 20, that's a very short book, but it's worth it, because it means that we're right now in this magnificent hall of absolute abundance and total billionhood, millionhood, beautyhood. And by the way, the word jewel, there's an off comment in Chandrakirti's commentary on the Guhya Samaja Tantra, the esoteric community, the secret community Tantra, esoteric community Tantra, which is sort of the Buddha's, the holodeck. And the universe is a holodeck of love and joy and bliss and compassion and wisdom. And so that holodeck is now embracing us through this sutra. And that's why I read this, although it's just a vision. It's a piece of performance. but the creating of the thing by the Suyama deity, not even Brahma. He's still a desire realm deity. So don't sell even the desire world short. The world of where there's still kleshas. There's too much lust here. God's had it too lusty. So don't sell it short. But anyway, he makes an off comment. He says, jewels, clouds of jewels, 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 jewels. He says, actually, all these jewels, they're just women. Says Chandrayati, great Indian Siddha yogi philosopher, still alive, but at the time he wrote that commentary, he was living in Goa, near the beach, in the 7th century, where he left after his monastery, after having been in his monastery, in Nalanda, being the magical abbot of his monastery. So it means, oh, beauty, beauty. You know, I think they use the word in Sanskrit, Alankara. Alankara. You know, Alankara, which means ornament, in its sort of colloquial, ordinary meaning. But Alankara also means anything arrayed in a sacrifice, in the old Vedic terms. And alam means like something like little, mini. It sort of means something unthreatening. Alam, something satisfying, something that's there for you. And kara means making it. So alankara. So it means beauty, really. So there should be the beauties of this and the beauties of that. The word adornment always means like, because reality itself is beauty. So the beauties of this and the beauties of that, I think really we should translate alankara as beauty. And it always says adornment this and adornment that, but we shouldn't bring it down to that. Anyway, so now book 20 called Eulogies in the Palace of the Suyama Heaven is book 20. And it's also not very long because it's more scene setting, but it's very important. So then, due to the spiritual force of the Buddha, a great enlightening being from each of the 10 directions, each accompanied, 10 by the way, is just the thing. You know, 10 means 8 on a horizontal plane, right? The 4 directions and the 4 quarters. You know, E, S, E, S, SW, W, NW, N, NE, E. Right? That's 8 plus up and down. But remember then, between up and down, if you switch the plane, then there would be 8 in that direction and then 8 in this direction. So the 10 is just for simplicity's sake, staying on the horizontal level and then have an up and down in it. So it's just a useful cyber, but also it has to do with 1 plus 0. So these are the people who invented the decimal system, folks. Not the Arabs, not any Western people, not the monotheists, but the Indians, you know, who are not polytheists either. In other words, monotheists. They are infinitheists. The divine is infinite. It's everywhere in every cell of every being. It is, and when you own that, when you inhabit that, when you're one with being nothing, when you're one with zero, when you're one with infinity, then you are Buddha. So 10 is magic because it's kind of the first level of zeros, you know, 1 plus 0. Then due to the spiritual force, and even diving into that is our precious digital reality, isn't it? It's 1 or 0. Then due to the spiritual force, so now there's going to some eulogies are going to happen, of the Buddha, a great enlightening being from each of the 10 directions, each accompanied by as many enlightening beings as atoms in a Buddha land, came from beyond as many lands as atoms in 100,000 Buddha lands, and gathered in an assembly. The names of these great enlightening beings were Forest of Virtues, Forest of Wisdom, Forest of Victory, Forest of Fearlessness, Forest of Consciousness, Forest of Energy, Forest of Power, Forest of Practice, Forest of Awareness, Forest of Knowledge. Why forest? Why is everybody a forest? Because forests are great. I have a friend who supports, he's someone like a deity within our materialist culture, and he is devoting his energy to 1 trillion trees being replanted on Earth. Apparently, our industrialized culture has cut down 3 trillion trees, which is why we're having this imbalance and this global overheating. Not just warming, it's overheating. And so he is intending to plant 3 trillion back. And he's energizing anybody who's planting hundreds of thousands of trees. And remember from the great Sadhguru that when you plant, you're planting a sprout, a sapling, not a tree. So you have to, planting it takes time because you have to watch it grow. So although I think maybe we will develop technologies or ways of planting bigger trees because we're in a hurry, because we mess things up by being in too much of a hurry, so we should heal them. We just need a little bit hurry to stop the hurry, okay, and then we'll calm down. All right? So forest is a good thing. And therefore, when you say forest of conscience, forest of energy, because trees are our partners. Not only in the Lord of the Rings where the Ents stand up off their roots and they go and help the good people, the humans and the whatever they're called, the little hobbits, and the elves go and get the orcs, and the trees really help. But that's just a personalization of the trees right out there. They're trees and they're helping us because I blow up my carbon over to them and they like it, and they make leaves, and then the leaves fall in the fall, and then they make soil, and then I grow food in the soil, and then the trees even can give me maple syrup and on my breakfast and in my whatever, and make me happy, my glucose, and they love us. And the trees are pure love. So a forest, that everyone's a forest, enlightening being is fine. And the lands which these enlightening beings came from were called intimate wisdom, symbolic wisdom, jewel wisdom, supreme wisdom, lamp wisdom, adamantine wisdom, peaceful wisdom, sun wisdom, clear wisdom, pure wisdom. These enlightening beings had each purely cultivated religious practice in the company of a Buddha. The names of those Buddhas were eternal eye, invincible eye, non-dwelling eye, imperturbable eye, divine eye, eye of liberation, eye comprehending truth, eye understanding forms, supreme eye, violet eye. And why is violet eye? Why are these Buddhas called everything eye? You have trees, you have wisdoms, and you have eyes. Because eyes, as a sense, among the senses, the eye is the one which allows you to escape from yourself. Because when you see, you become what you see. And what you see, you bring into your being. And we are all field beings. So like all the trees out there, which I see, are part of my body. They're part of my material body. So I'm a field. And therefore our fields are all inter-overlapping with each other. Inter-overlapping. We're interbeing with other beings. Says, thank you, Thich Nhat Hanh, for interbeing. Inter-overlapping with other beings. And inter-overlapping with them is because we're fields. And we feel better being fields than being a little enclosed inside a skin, like everything chasing us. So the eye, the ultimate eye, of course, sees in all directions. And therefore it's open, it's a doorway to infinity. So therefore each Buddha was called such and such an eye. And Emerson, in his one speech Harvard Divinity School allowed him to make there, and then exiled him for life, even though he was the greatest teacher in America for generations, for decades after that. But they wouldn't invite him back because he said, everybody should be Jesus. And what that means is you should be out in nature as an eye that simultaneously sees everything in all directions. So therefore it's one with nature. And they didn't even know what he was talking about, those congregationalists, pompous asses. But they subliminally knew he was teaching the pantheistic heresy, as far as they were concerned. And he was therefore trespassing against their theology of the absolute otherness of God, so that reality was somewhere outside of themselves, who are in their self-defeating, self-despising, and therefore other people despising culture that they were insisting upon. And so he was too dangerous for them, because he might make them go around and dance in their weird flat black hat that they wore in their ceremonies. Having come to the Buddha, these enlightening beings bowed at the Buddha's feet. Again, it's not a Buddhist Buddha. This is an infinite being called an enlightened being, and a personification of enlightenment, but not the only personification, just one little reflex of enlightenment. So don't think this is the Buddha and therefore, that's a Buddhist person. No, that's a person who has become a divine person, a trans-divine person, a human person, a transhuman person, a pure life itself. Infinity, a doorway to infinity of life energy, bliss energy, as a love being. These enlightening beings bowed at the Buddha's feet. Then each made a jewel-banked lion seats in their respective directions and sat thereupon. So they also had the magnificent seats. As in this world, enlightening beings gathered in this way in the Suyama heaven, so this also take place in all worlds. The names of the enlightening beings, their worlds, and the Buddhas they associated with were all the same. So it's all like rippling out. Then the world-honored one emanated from the top of his feet. 10 trillion beams of his feet were crossed, right? Like this. So from the top of the feet, 10 trillion beams of light of wonderful hues, illumining the 10 directions. The Buddhas and congregations in the palaces of the Suyama heavens and all worlds were made clearly visible. Then the enlightening being, forest of virtues, imbued with power from the Buddha, looked over the 10 directions and said in verse, Buddha emanates great light, illumining the 10 directions. All see the fortunate, honored one of heaven and earth freely, without obstruction. Buddha sits in the Suyama palace, yet pervades all worlds in the cosmos. This phenomenon is most extraordinary, wondered at by the world. The king of the Suyama heaven has praised 10 Buddhas in verse. What is seen in this assembly is all the same everywhere. Those groups of enlightening beings who all have the same names as ours, in every place in the 10 directions they expound the unsurpassed teaching. The worlds from which they come are also the same in name as ours. Each of them have with their Buddhas perfected religious practice. The names of each of those Buddhas are also the same as of ours. Their countries are rich and happy. Their spiritual powers are autonomous. Everywhere in the 10 directions they think the Buddha's there. Some see him in the human world. Some see him in heaven. The Buddha abides everywhere in all the various lands. We now see the Buddha in this celestial court. He made a vow of enlightenment that extended to every world in the cosmos. This is why Buddha's power pervades all inconceivably, leaving behind worldly desires. He fulfilled boundless virtues. Therefore, he gains spiritual power and is seen by all beings. He traverses all worlds in the cosmos like space with no obstruction. One body, infinite bodies. His form cannot be grasped. Buddha's virtues are boundless. How could they be measured? Neither shifting, neither abiding, nor leaving. He permeates the cosmos. 10 verses, of course. Then the enlightening being, forest of wisdom, empowered by the Buddha, looked over the 10 directions and said in verse, the great leader of the world, supreme honored one, free from defilement, is hard to get to meet, even in countless aeons. Whoops, he was everywhere. Now it's hard to meet him. Buddha emits great light, visible to all the world, preaching extensively for the multitudes. He benefits all living beings. Buddha appears in the world, removing the darkness of ignorance. Such a lamp of the world is rare and hard to get to behold. He's everywhere, but hard to get to behold. Because we don't recognize him everywhere, is why. We make it hard. Having cultivated generosity, self-control, and patience, diligence, and meditation, and ultimate transcendent wisdom, the 6 transcendent virtues, with them he lights the world. The Buddha has no peer. None comparable can be found without comprehending real truth. No one can perceive him, only in reality. The more we see reality, then we find him everywhere. But then we live so much enclosed and unrealistic, constructed, inaccurate world. Buddha's body and psychic powers are inconceivably free, neither going nor coming. He speaks the truth to liberate. If any can see and hear the pure teacher of humans and gods, they'll leave forever the states of woe and cast off all miseries. For measureless, countless aeons he cultivated enlightening practice. Who cannot know the meaning of this cannot attain Buddhahood. If one can know this meaning, one's virtues will surpass one who makes offerings to countless Buddhas for inconceivable aeons. Because making offerings, you're thinking there's something else and somewhere else. Even if one gives to a Buddha countless lands full of jewels, if one knows not this meaning, one never attains enlightenment. Then the enlightening being forest of victory, imbued with power from the Buddha, looked over the 10 directions and said in verse, as in the summer months, with the sky clear and cloudless, the radiant sun blazes with light filling the 10 directions, that light boundless, impossible to measure even by those with eyes, let alone the blind. So are the Buddhas. Their virtues are boundless, even in inconceivable aeons. No one can know them in detail. All things have no provenance, and no one can create them. There is nowhere whence they are born. They cannot be discriminated. All things have no provenance, therefore they have no birth. Because there is no birth, neither can extinction be found. All things are birthless and have no extinction either. Those who understand in this way will see the Buddha. It's all the uncreated nirvana, all of this seeming created world. Because this maya, this wonderful magic, because things have no birth, their inherent nature is non-existent. One who analyzes and knows this will arrive at the profound truth. Because things have no inherent nature, no one can comprehend them. Inherent reality is better than nature. Anyway, no one can comprehend because they have no inherent reality but nature. Okay, no one can comprehend them. When understanding things in this way, ultimately nothing is understood. Because you knew it already. That which is said, because you don't understand it, you are it. You don't stand under it. That which is said to have birth is to manifest lands. If one can know the nature of lands, one's mind will not be confused. Examining according to truth the nature of the worlds and lands, if one is able to know this, one can explain all things if you understand the land. Then the enlightening being, forest of fearlessness, by the power of the Buddha, looked over the 10 directions and said in verse, the Buddha's immense body reaches the extremities of the cosmos. Without leaving this seat, it pervades all places. Whoever, hearing this teaching, respects and has faith in it, shall forever escape all the miseries of the states of woe. Even going to many worlds, uncountably numerous, single-mindedly desiring to hear of the powers of the Buddha and such qualities of Buddhas, their unexcelled enlightenment, even wanting to hear for a moment, none is able to do so. If any in the past believed this aspect of Buddha, they have already become Buddhas and are lamps of the world. If any will get to hear of the Buddha's free powers, and having heard will believe, they too will become Buddhas. If any in the present can believe this teaching of Buddha, they will also become Buddhas and expound the teaching fearlessly. This teaching is hard to encounter even in countless aeons. If any get to hear it, know it is the power of past vows. If any can accept and hold such teachings of Buddha and upholding them, spread them too, they will become Buddhas. But if you get to hear it, know it is the power of past vows. So you know if you're here on Saturday night that you have the vow of Bodhisattva, you're already Bodhisattva, you have determined to be Buddha yourself, and you have already made the vow in previous life. You can know that by inference. If any can accept and hold such teachings of the Buddha and upholding them, spread them too, they will become Buddhas. How much the more so those who work diligently, firm of mind, not giving up. You should know such people will certainly attain enlightenment. So not only will we win the election in 2022, but we'll attain enlightenment. Then the enlightening being, forest of conscience, empowered by the Buddha, looked over the 10 directions and said in verse, I wonder what his conscience or he's translating. I think this could be a forest of mindfulness. He's the trees. He's so mindful. He's a forest of trees. If people get to hear this rare teaching of freedom and can produce a joyful mind, they'll soon remove the webs of doubt. You will. You will. We will. The one who knows and sees all speaks these words himself. There's nothing the Buddha knows not. Therefore, he's inconceivable. Never from lack of wisdom has wisdom ever been born. Worldlings are always in the dark, and therefore none can produce it. So that means your wisdom will come from your wisdom, which you already have. Because your non-wisdom will not produce wisdom. Only your wisdom will produce wisdom. So you have wisdom in your non-wisdom. Worldlings are always in the dark, and therefore none can produce it. Just as form and non-form are two and not one, so are knowledge and ignorance, they are essentially different. Essentially different. As signs and signlessness, birth, death, and nirvana are distinct and not the same, so are knowledge and nescience. Knowledge and misknowledge, I want to say. When a world first comes to be, there's no sign of decay. So it is with knowledge and ignorance. Their characteristics are not simultaneous. Like the enlightening being's first state of mind does not coexist with their final state of mind, so it is with knowledge and misknowledge. These two minds do not coexist. Therefore, misknowledge doesn't really exist, and not only knowledge exists. Just as bodies have concept, but when you're stuck in misknowledge, you certainly think knowledge does not exist. Just as you're sure of it. That's part of your misknowledge. Just as bodies of consciousness are individual and don't combine, so also knowledge and misknowledge ultimately have no communion. Just as a panacea can eliminate all toxins, so also can knowledge extinguish all misknowledge. The enlightened is unexcelled and also has no peer. He has no compare at all and therefore is hard to meet. Then the enlightening being, these are eulogies, but they're so profound. And he did such a, Tom Cleary, thank you so much. You did such a great job translating this. I can pick, and I'm sure you would improve should we have had time to stay in the stream and work there sitting on the rocks together. We might have had modified terminology, but also in a way the language has changed because you did this. So what you did at this time is perfect. Just because I kvetch now, don't think twice about it. All things have no... Then the enlightening forest of energy, empowered by the Buddha, looked over the 10 directions and said in verse, all things have no differentiation, and no one can know them. Only among Buddhas are they known, because Buddha's knowledge is ultimate. Just as gold and gold color are in essence no different, so also phenomena and non-phenomena are in essence no different. Sentient beings and not sentient beings are both without reality. In this way, the natures of all things, in truth, are non-existent. Just as the future has not the marks of the past, so do all things not have any marks at all. Just as the signs of birth, everything is markless, signless, like empty. Just as the signs of birth and death are all unreal, so also are all things void of intrinsic reality, intrinsic nature, inherent existence, whatever. Nirvana cannot be grasped, but when spoken of, there are two kinds. So it is of all things. When discriminated, they are different. But nirvana itself cannot be grasped. You cannot own nirvana, it will own you. It does own you already, if you only let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. You can't own nirvana, but nirvana can let it be. Nirvana cannot be grasped, but when they're spoken of, there are two kinds. So it is of all things. When discriminated, they are different. Just as, based on something counted, there exists a way of counting, their nature is non-existence. Thus are phenomena perfectly known. It's like the method of counting, adding, it's like the method of counting, adding one up to infinity. The numbers have no substantial nature. They are distinguished due to intellect. Because when do you ever get to infinity from one? Never. You cannot get to infinity, but you also cannot start from anywhere other than infinity, in fact. Just as the worlds have an end when burnt in the final Holocaust, yet it's a supernova, yet space is not destroyed, so is the Buddha's knowledge, and space is not nothing. So is the Buddha's knowledge. These sentient beings of the universe each grasp characteristics of space. So it is of the Buddhas. Worldlings conceive of them arbitrarily. You know why this planet will not be destroyed by a Death Star, and why we will not have thermonuclear winter and a final nuclear holocaust on this planet, and why global overheating will not make this planet uninhabitable for all of us. You know why? Because it already has happened infinite numbers of times. It's happened to us all so many times. We will ultimately not allow it to happen now, because it was so boring. It also didn't end anything. We just got reborn back in the same place, and we did it again, and again, and again, and again, and again, and again. And we said, in some alternate reality, we're still doing it. So in this one, we're not going to do it. We're not going to let it be. Let it be hell. No, we're not. These sentient beings of the universe each grasps characteristics of space. So it is of the Buddhas. Worldlings conceive of them arbitrarily. Then the enlightening being forest of power said to the Buddha, this is the force. Luke, by the Buddha's power, looked over the 10 directions and said in verse, all realms of living beings are in the past, present, or future. The living beings of past, present, and future all dwell in the 5 heaps, the 5 clusters, the 5 aggregates. The 5 clusters are based on actions. Actions are based on mind. Mental phenomena are like phantoms, and so indeed is the world. The world doesn't make itself, nor is it made by another. Yet it has a formation and also has a disintegration. Seems to. Though the world has a formation and a disintegration, one who understands the world would not speak in this way. What is the world and what is not what is the world and what is not a world? World and not world are only distinctions of name. The 3 times and 5 clusters are called the world. Their extinction is not the world. Thus they are just temporary names. How are the clusters explained? What natures do they have? The nature of the clusters is indestructible. So it is called unborn, vajra, clear light, voidness. Analyzing these clusters, their nature is fundamentally empty and nil. Because it is empty, it cannot be destroyed. This is the meaning of birthlessness. Such sentient beings are thus. Since sentient beings are thus, so also are the Buddhas. Buddhas and Buddha teachings intrinsically have no existence. If any can know these things, then without delusion, the one who knows and sees all will always be before them. So then Buddha will be with you when you know there is no Buddha. I know you. Then the enlightening being, forest of practice, empowered by the Buddha, looked over the 10 directions and said in verse, forest of practice. After the force, you have practice as a forest. As in all worlds, all the solid elements have no independent existence, yet are found everywhere. So also does the Buddha body pervade all worlds, its various physical forms, without abode or origin. So that's why all solid, illusory things are mirror wisdom. They are vairochana, the mirror wisdom. Just by seeing them wrongly and absolutizing them, and you as the subjectivity absolutely seeing them, the fact that you and absolute them can interact and thus destroy your absoluteness is the mirror of your freedom and their freedom and your Buddha wisdom and vairochana, your shining clear light of freedom. Just because of activities do we say the name living beings, and there is no action to be found apart from living beings. The nature of action is fundamentally empty and nil, but is that on which beings are based, everywhere producing all physical forms, and yet coming from nowhere. This is the active power of forms, impossible to conceive. If one comprehends the basis therein, no object is seen. The Buddha body is also like this. It cannot be conceived. Its various physical forms appear in all lands in the cosmos. The body is not the Buddha, nor is a Buddha a body. Only reality is the body, permeating all things. So everything is the Buddha. And then it's rare to see the Buddha, and yet everything is the Buddha. That means you must find the Buddha in everything and in no thing equally. If one can see the Buddha body, then you are the Buddha. That means in that way. If one can see the Buddha body pure as the nature of reality, such a one has no doubt or confusion about the Buddha. And the Buddha is just love then. Love and wisdom and compassion. That is it. Everything is love and wisdom and compassion. So you can relax. Wisdom, knowing that wisdom is bliss. If one sees all things as in essence like nirvana, this is seeing the enlightened ultimately without abode. If one cultivates right awareness and clearly sees realistic awareness and clearly sees true awakening, signless without discrimination, this is an heir of truth. This is an inheritor of truth. That is your heritage. When Buddha's ex-wife, Yashodhara, Shakyamuni Buddha's ex-wife, wouldn't go see him teaching when he came back to Shakyaland from becoming Buddha in Magadha, and wouldn't let her son go. He finally said, Mom, I got to go hear Dad give his teaching because everybody says it's so great and I know it's going to be, I know it, I got to go. No, she wouldn't let him go. Yashodhara wouldn't for a long time. Then finally she said, all right, but on one condition. What is the condition? Well, Rahula, after the teaching or whenever you get a moment with your dad, you'd say to him, Dad, I want my inheritance. Where is my inheritance? Because she knew Buddha was penniless. He was a mendicant. But she wasn't mad because Buddha left her in the home. But she is mad because Buddha didn't take her with him to be an ascetic with him. Because she so much loved the Buddha. Because she was the Buddha herself, of course. Just like Maya, the mother, and so on. But anyway, she went through this little thing with his son. So then he rushes off. Okay, I'm going. And runs down to the teaching place outside in the town, in the tent where all the whole population of the city except her, they were there. And listens to Dad teaching, whatever great teaching he gives. And then it's over. Then he goes over. It's over like 11:30 a.m. from dawn maybe, or 9 a.m., whenever, 8:30. And he goes up and says, Mr. Buddha, excuse me. Hello, Mr. Buddha. I said, yes. Son, what? He says, Sonny, what? Well, Dad, you're my dad, I'm sorry. I'm your son. And please, I apologize, I don't mean to be rude, but I promised my mom, when she gave me permission to come and hear your wonderful teaching, I promised her I would say this to you. So please don't be mad. Can I have my inheritance? And the Buddha smiles, looks at him and says, oh, Rahula, my son, you want your inheritance? Yes, please. Ehi bhikkhu, he says, Ehi bhikkhu, come here, mendicant. He says, come here, mendicant. So then Rahula walks toward his dad, comes closer and closer, and when he gets to where it can't be noon because the sun is not directly overhead, it has to be like 11:30 in the morning or 11 in the morning. As soon as he gets to where the shadow of the Shakyamuni falls on him, he goes into the cool shade of the Buddha. He becomes an arhat. He attains nirvana. He viscerally, every fiber of his body is in the uncreated. He has the orgasmic ecstasy in every piece of his body, the peaceful orgasmic, full orgasmic. He melts into it. He dissolves into the pure nirvana. And it's like, it doesn't even scream with delight or joy because everything is that. And he knows it's always been that. So there's no like thrill or anything, no need of it. There's like maybe a little thrill on the edge, but he's so ripened to it, it just completely melts into it peacefully, like entering a warm bath. And Buddha then says to him, his relational body is still there, of course, completely, although immersed in nirvana, and says to him, how's that for inheritance? And he's speechlessly appreciative. An inheritor of truth. Then the enlightening being forest of awareness, imbued with the power of the Buddha, looked over the 10 directions and said in verse, almost there, in celebration, 2 more sets of 10. It's like a painter spreading the various colors. Delusion grasps different forms, but the elements have no distinctions. It's like art, that means. It's pure art. Even ignorance is artfully creating a sense of separateness from nirvana, from blissfulness, from beauty. But that's an artwork, actually. And it is nothing other than the beauty. And it's unmade and it's uncreated as the beauty. In the elements, there's no form, and no form in the elements. Yet apart from the elements, no form can be found. In the mind is no painting. In painting, there's no mind. Yet not apart from mind is any painting to be found. Oh, this is a great one for the artist. The mind never stops manifesting all forms. We're all tremendous artists creating the world around us. So that's why we're tired at night. Manifesting all forms, countless, inconceivably many unknown to one another. Just as a painter can't know his own mind or her own mind or its own mind, yet paints due to the mind, so is the nature of all things. Mind is like an artist, able to paint the worlds. The 5 clusters are all born thence. There's nothing it doesn't make. So all the making is illusory, it doesn't really happen, but it's happening. As is the mind, so is the Buddha. As the Buddha, so living beings. Know that Buddha and mind are in essence inexhaustible. If people know the actions of mind create all the worlds, they will see the Buddha and understand Buddha's true nature. Mind does not stay in the body, nor body stay in the mind. Yet it's able to perform Buddha work freely, without precedent. If people want to really know all Buddhas of all times, they should contemplate the nature of the cosmos. All is but mental construction. So as a scientist, who is it who contemplates the nature of the cosmos? That is the scientist, the one who wants to know reality. We're all scientists. We're not only all artists, we're all scientists. So art, we create illusory worlds magically, and as a scientist, we come to understand their uncreated nature at the depth and their profundity and their deepest reality, which does not destroy their insubstantial and misknowledge created reality. It doesn't destroy anything, because it's all uncreated, it's all there from the beginning. Then the enlightening being forest of knowledge received, and this knowledge is intuitive knowledge. It is knowledge by being everything. Receiving power from the Buddha, looked over the 10 directions and said in verse, the grasped cannot be grasped. The seen cannot be seen. The heard cannot be heard. The one mind is inconceivable. The finite and the infinite are both ungraspable. If any want to apprehend them, ultimately they apprehend nothing. To say what should not be said is self-deception. When one's own task is not complete, one cannot gladden others. Therefore, I'm not pretending I can gladden you, but this sutra can gladden you, so I will read it. Those who wish to laud the Buddha's boundless body of wondrous form, because this sutra is done by one, comes from one whose task is complete, who has done krityanustana, who has completely done what is to be done. One cannot gladden, so one's task is not complete, one cannot gladden others. Those who wish to laud the Buddha's boundless body of wondrous form could not express it fully even in countless aeons. Just as the wish-fulfilling jewel can manifest all colors, being colorless yet manifesting color, so are all the Buddhas. So don't be so surprised. Your white glass crystal, transparent glass crystal, when the light shines through it, it explodes in a rainbow of colors, and yet there's no colors in it. Also, like clear space, is formless and invisible, and though it shows all forms, none can see space. So it is with the Buddhas. They manifest infinite forms everywhere, yet are not in the province of mental activity, so no one is able to see them. So the Buddha's voice is heard. The sound is not the Buddha, and yet not apart from sound can the truly awake be known. Enlightenment has no coming or going. It's apart from all discrimination. How then can one say he is able to see it? He's saying what is false. The Buddha does not see himself, in fact. The Buddha, he only sees other beings. But his seeing of other beings allows them to see a Buddha, a freedom, an infinity. The Buddha have no doctrine. The Buddhas have no doctrine. How could the Buddha have any explanation? It is just in accord with one's... That's what's so great. Oh, I'm Buddha now, but I'm so sorry I can't explain it to you. That is the best. The Buddhas have no doctrine. How could the Buddha have any explanation? It is just in accord with one's own mind. One thinks Buddha expounds such a teaching. Oh, that's it. That's the end of the eulogies. That's the end of book 20 and the end of this session. I'm sure it's been an hour or so. And so that's the end of this session. That's this Saturday Night Live. But this is live because that is the gift of Thomas Cleary, translating it for us into English, from Chinese, which was translated from the Sanskrit, and it can, never mind. That's his gift of Thomas Cleary. And the gift of Buddha, it was to ancient India through Sanskrit, and the gift of the Nagas, the underworld beings, the underwater beings, to preserve the jewel inscription by the Vajrapani of this teaching, given to keep on the underworld by the Nagas, so they could bring it back to Nagarjuna to spread it among the humans when the humans were ready, and then translate it into Tibetan and Sanskrit and Mongolian. The only languages I think it's ever been translated in until this English. Because the Japanese would read the Chinese and the Mongolians would read the Tibetan, but they have it in Mongolian and they could also read it in Mongolian. And then it was translated into Manchu also, actually. And then there's almost no Manchus left to read it, very sad. But we have to encourage the Manchus to relearn their language and read it in its beauty and its Manchurian. By an emperor, edited by an emperor in the 18th century, actually. Translated into Manchu. It's beautiful. That's a performance waiting for an audience. And our gift is to read it to you tonight, and then Piotr's gift to record it, and Michael's gift to organize it, and Lynn's gift to organize it, and Nina's gift to let me come and do it. And that's Casey Wangel's to introduce me to it. So there's all these gifts. And the gifts of the Shambhala people who published it and who allow us to read it and to record it. But although we couldn't reprint it. And you can buy it if you want at a discount. That's their gift also. And next one we will do book 21, the 10 practices. But there's so many practices in those eulogies as well. But we're going to read, next one we will read and elucidate the 10 practices. Thank you very much. We dedicate the merit. May everyone quickly become a Buddha, find the Buddha in themselves, and thereby quickly bring all other beings into Buddhahood, equal to them. Okay? That's our dedication.